Hello, and welcome to the Community Conservation Partnerships Program 2024 Grant Overview. The Community Conservation Partnerships Program is administered by DCNR's Bureau of Recreation and Conservation. The Bureau's mission is to be a leader in protecting the Commonwealth's natural and heritage resources, advancing the greening of Pennsylvania, and providing recreational opportunities for all to enjoy. How do we advance our mission? Through grants and technical assistance, support for local recreation and conservation projects, and above all, partnering with local communities, nonprofits, and people like you. DCNR's Community Conservation Partnerships Program, also known as C2P2, is one of the largest funders of local recreation and conservation projects in Pennsylvania. We have funded more than 8,000 projects all across Pennsylvania since the program's start in 1995. As an example of the program's impact, during the 2022 regular spring round, C2P2 funded more than 300 projects, including construction of more than 140 local parks and over 50 miles of trail. We also helped permanently protect more than 7,000 acres of land that will be open to the public for outdoor recreation. C2P2 grants are in demand, and that demand is increasing. Funding requests have more than doubled in the past 10 years. C2P2 is a competitive grant program. On average, DCNR is able to fund about half of the funding request we receive in a given year. This is why it is so important to have a quality project and application. Attending this workshop and applying what you learn here in your application are great ways to boost your chances of getting funded. C2P2 funds a wide variety of local recreation and conservation projects. Comprehensive park and recreation plans, park rehabilitation, trail construction, land purchases, boat launches, community tree planting, and regional education programs are just a few of the many kinds of projects we can help fund. We'll talk more about our various project types later in this presentation and in the separate breakout sessions. Although we fund a variety of projects that advance our Bureau priorities receive additional consideration in the scoring process. These priorities are informed by statewide plans, such as the statewide Comprehensive Outdoor Recreation Plan. When designing your project and filling out your application, think about whether and how your project can help move one or more of these priorities forward. For community parks and recreation projects, we're looking for both planning and development projects that focus on access for all and the rehabilitation of existing parks. We'll talk more about access for all in later slides in this presentation. For land conservation and watershed protection projects, we want to see work that will protect critical habitat, climate-resilient lands, forested watersheds, and riparian corridors. For watershed restoration and rivers projects, we want projects that will improve water quality and enhance public access to Pennsylvania waterways. We're also focused on tree planting, especially community tree planting and riparian buffers. For trails, the focus is on closing identified priority trail gaps. The Trails breakout session will talk more about what those are and how to find out if your project helps close one. Finally, across all project types, we're looking for projects that address recreation access needs in medium or high priority areas. Again, we'll talk more about what those are in a later slide. Projects that serve historically underserved populations are also priorities. Eligible applicants include municipalities of any type, municipal agencies, or any official agency created by a municipal government under the laws of the Commonwealth, such as municipal authorities, councils of government, and intergovernmental commissions. For nonprofit organizations, they must be registered with the IRS as a 501c3 nonprofit. as well as with the Pennsylvania Department of State's Bureau of Charitable Organizations. They must also share a similar mission as the program to be eligible. Pre-qualified land trusts are nonprofit conservation or preservation organizations that have been in existence for at least 5 years and have been approved by the Bureau. For-profit businesses are eligible in some cases. They're only eligible for our Pennsylvania recreational trails, snowmobile, and ATV funding. For-profits must be established under Pennsylvania law or must be authorized to do business in Pennsylvania to be eligible. This slide shows a timeline of the 2024 grant round. The grant round opens on January 16th and closes on April 3rd at 4 p.m. During the spring and summer, we review and rank all the applications we receive, and we typically announce grant awards during the fall. The grant agreements will usually start in January of the following year. This means that the earliest your project would start would be the spring or summer of 2025, depending on where you are in the design process. Our grants are funded from a mix of both state and federal sources. Applicants do not need to select which funding source they're applying for. We match up funding sources with the projects that fit them. But we still want to acknowledge our funding sources in this presentation. Without these funds, we couldn't offer these grants. Our largest funding source is the Keystone Recreation, Park, and Conservation Fund. It comes from a portion of the real estate transfer tax. Our second largest source is federal, the Land and Water Conservation Fund. This funding is provided through the National Park Service. The Environmental Stewardship Fund, sometimes called Growing Greener, is our third largest source. It comes from tipping fees and the Marcellus Legacy Fund. Many other funding sources contribute to our grants. Some more examples are on the slide. Next, let's talk about match requirements for our grants. Nearly all our grants do require some level of match. Match requirements are typically set in the legislation establishing the funding sources for our grants. Most projects require a 50-50 or dollar-for-dollar match. Match must be secure at time of application. Be sure to include support letters showing proof of match along with your application. If your match is not secure when you apply, most likely your project will not be funded. Also remember that match only counts if it's spent during the grant agreement period. Match is not eligible if you spend it before the grant agreement period starts. What is eligible as match? This is the question we get asked most often. Match can be cash, non-cash, or a mix of the two. Cash match can come from a variety of sources, including most federal sources, most local sources, such as municipal budgets, dedicated open space referenda funds, or County Act 13 funds, and most private sources, like private donors and foundations. State sources are often eligible as well, as long as they're not coming from other DCNR funds. PennDOT and DCED grants, for example, have both been used as match on multiple DCNR grant projects. As for non-cash, sources might include in-house staff labor and equipment use, land donation, donated goods and services, and volunteer labor. If you have questions about the eligibility of a particular match source, please connect with your regional advisor. We'll talk about them next. Your Bureau of Recreation and Conservation Regional Advisor is your first point of contact for help about any of our grant and technical assistance programs. One of your first steps when applying to us for funding should be to contact your regional advisor. This map shows the regional advisors for each county in the state. Choose your advisor based on where your project will be located, not where you live or where your office is. Regional advisors can assist you in making your project more competitive. Some of the services they provide include conducting a site visit and providing technical assistance, networking you with other people and organizations with similar projects, directing you to central office staff when needed, and answering your questions and resolving issues. Because the regional advisors are so important in developing your grant application, let's take a few minutes and introduce all of them. In the West, we have Erin Wiley-Moyers, Regional Advisor for the Northwest Counties. Adrian Smochek, Regional Advisor for Lawrence, Butler, Armstrong, and Indiana counties. Those with projects in Allegheny County should also contact her unless your project is in Pittsburgh. And Adam Mattis, Regional Manager. He serves the Southwest counties. Those with projects in Pittsburgh should also contact Adam. In the central part of the state, we have Wes Farringer, Regional Advisor for the North Central counties, and Lori Yike, Regional Manager. She serves as advisor for the South Central counties. Finally, in the East, we have Christine DeTore, Regional Advisor for the Northeast counties, Lauren Possinger, Regional Manager. He serves as advisor for Schuylkill, Berks, Lehigh, and Northampton counties, Drew Gilchrist, Regional Advisor for Chester and Montgomery counties, and Jeannie Barrett Ortiz, Regional Advisor for Bucks, Delaware, and Philadelphia counties. After you've spoken to your regional advisor about your project, where do you go next? Our DCNR Grants Customer Service Portal. The portal is your one-stop shop for everything DCNR grants. It's where you apply for grants, and it's where you'll manage your grant if you are awarded one. The portal is available by going to apps.dcnr.pa.gov/grants. All applicants will need to apply using the electronic grant application located on the portal. Walkthrough videos on how to use the portal are available on DCNR's YouTube channel. Speaking of DCNR's YouTube channel, the department provides many online resources to help you better understand our grant program, develop more competitive applications, and of course, apply for and manage grants. These resources include DCNR grant tutorials found on DCNR's YouTube channel. Here you can find portal walkthroughs, recordings of this grant workshop, and other helpful videos. The Bureau's webpage on the DCNR website. Here you can find general information about each grant project type. And finally, there's the Pennsylvania Outdoor Recreation Plan webpage. On it you can find a digital copy of the plan and other resources related to it, which will help you answer some of the grant application questions. We've talked in general about our grant program. Let's now dive a little deeper into the specifics of what we fund in each of our program areas. One of the first questions you'll be asked when applying is, which program are you applying for? Different program areas ask different application questions, so it's important to pick the one that fits best with your project. If you aren't sure which program area to apply under, be sure to discuss it with your regional advisor. We receive more applications for development than for any other project type. Development projects can include both construction of new recreation and park facilities, as well as the rehabilitation of existing facilities. Some examples of the kinds of sites we fund are on the slide. All facilities must be open to the public. Development projects are sometimes phased over multiple rounds of funding. However, each phase must have recreational value and create a complete and usable project. Priority projects here include rehabilitation of existing facilities and projects that expand recreational access to new or underserved communities. Municipalities with fewer than 5,000 people can apply for a special kind of development grant called a Small Communities Grant. Small Communities grants have lower match requirements than typical development grants. The primary focus of these grants is the rehabilitation or new development of basic outdoor recreation and park facilities that are open to the public. Common projects we fund under Small Communities are playgrounds, pavilions, and ADA accessibility upgrades. The grant request can range from $60,000 to $100,000. Match is unique for these projects. The first $30,000 of the grant request requires no match. Every dollar above that requires dollar-for-dollar match. So a $60,000 grant request would require just $30,000 in match. A $100,000 request would require $70,000 in match. Planning grants help applicants create an implementable plan with strong public input to guide future investments. A list of common plan types that we fund are on the slide. These plans establish short and long-term goals, provide a roadmap to implementation, outline roles and responsibilities, and build public support for projects and funding requests. DCNR can help purchase land and rights-of-way. Purchases can be in fee or a permanent easement. Grants can help acquire land for natural areas, open space, and critical habitat, typically referred to as passive parks, or active parks, parks that include baseball fields, multipurpose fields, and other typical park amenities. Be aware that property acquired and developed with state or federal funds through this program will need to be protected from conversion to non-recreation or conservation uses. Trail projects support the planning, acquisition, development, and rehabilitation of trails and trail facilities. They can also support trail education programs. Trail project costs should emphasize trails and trail facilities, such as trailheads, comfort stations, and signage. Projects where a trail is part of a broader park renovation, such as loop trails, should apply for development funding, not trail funding. Trails funded under this program area can be motorized or non-motorized. ATV and snowmobile projects are a special kind of trail project. They focus on the planning, acquisition, development, and rehabilitation specifically of ATV and snowmobile trails and trail facilities. They can also support equipment purchases to maintain these trails, as well as ATV and snowmobile educational programs. ATV and snowmobile projects are unique because they're funded from a unique funding source, the fees riders pay to register their ATVs and snowmobiles. Because of these unique funding sources, the rules for these projects are a little different from most of our grants. No match is required for these grants, but it is encouraged. These grants are also some of the only projects we fund where for-profit businesses are eligible. ATV and snowmobile grants also have unique funding rounds. In 2024, those rounds are February 1st through March 29th and August 1st through September 30th. Rivers Conservation funds water-based recreation and conservation projects. Examples of the types of projects funded are on the slide. Priorities are those that implement an existing rivers conservation plan. Municipal applicants are preferred for this program area, but they're not required. Nonprofits are encouraged to partner with a municipal entity and have them submit the application. Projects that are not intended to be open to the general public, such as streambank improvements, require an agreement between the applicant and landowner to provide access to construct and maintain the improvements. Rivers projects cover a variety of grant types, so they don't have their own category in the grants portal. Instead, you should apply under the category that best fits your overall project, such as development, trails, planning, etc. There will be an option during the application process to mark your project as a rivers project. If you're interested in a rivers project, we recommend that you attend the development breakout for more information on development projects in general, then attend the community and watershed forestry breakout for more detailed information specific to rivers. Community and watershed forestry is our newest grant opportunity. It expands on our previous riparian buffer funding to cover additional forestry practices. Community and watershed forestry can fund riparian forest buffers, lawn conversions to forest or meadow, and community tree planting, including tree vitalize projects. One application can support multiple installations and project types. Match is lower than many of our other project types. Only 20% match is required. The percent is calculated based on the total project cost, which is the sum of your grant request and match. For buffers, the minimum buffer width is 15 feet, but we strongly encourage the widest buffer possible. Please note that this program is meant for community and watershed forestry practices only. If your project will include other scope items, such as recreation amenities or fishing access, you should apply as a rivers project instead. Our last program area is partnerships. Partnership grants support statewide and regional initiatives. These initiatives are diverse and may include educational programs, special purpose planning, and mini-grant programs, among other activities. You should attend the Partnerships breakout session for more information and example projects. Similar to community and watershed forestry, one application can support multiple scope of work items. Partnerships also include smaller, local capacity building grants through the peer and circuit rider programs. These programs help municipalities contract with a professional to complete special purpose plans and studies, such as walkability and safe routes to parks assessments. Peer and circuit rider grants are unique in that they have rolling application periods. If you're interested in those grants, please contact your regional advisor before starting an application. Let's now dive deeper into the grant application itself. Knowing what information we're looking for will help you prepare the most competitive application you can. Let's start with some basic do's and don'ts for grant application success. For the do's, call or set up a site visit with your regional advisor. It's never too early to do this. You can even do it before the grant round opens. Regional advisors get busier as the grant round goes on, so if you wait too long to contact them, they may not be able to visit your site. Examine the whole application early, including ready-to-go requirements and grant criteria questions. There is nothing worse than finding out at the last minute that you forgot a required document or don't understand how to answer a particular question. Work with a professional to design your project and develop accurate cost estimates. Write with the reviewer in mind. We review a lot of applications in a short time frame. The easier it is for us to find the information we're asking for, the better it is for you and your application. When answering application questions, be concise, but provide details specific to your scope of work. Talking in general terms won't make your project stand out. Reference your scope of work items in your answers. Tell us how this specific project will impact your community. As for the don'ts, don't start your application at the last minute. It takes time to create a strong application. Besides coming up with quality answers to the application questions, you'll also need several documents that take time to pull together, such as a site development drawing, P&DI review, and resolution. Don't reuse answers from other grants or previous applications. Not only do our questions sometimes change, but we want your answers to speak to this project's specific scope of work. Don't use generic form letters for partners. Some applicants will create form letters for partners to sign, but these generic letters give us little information on the partner's specific role in the project. When it comes to partners, quality matters more than quantity. Show us in your letters of support how each partner specifically will be helping with the project or benefiting from it. Finally, don't assume we know details about you or your project. Although you'll have talked with a regional advisor about your project, every project gets reviewed by at least 2 staff members. Those staff may not be familiar with you or your project. Provide enough detail in your answers that someone who has never been to your project site or community can understand what you intend to do and why it matters. One of the most important tips for a successful application is to make sure all the parts of your grant application tell the same story. Your scope of work, your site development drawing, and your detailed budget should all be consistent. Items listed in your scope should match what appears on your site development drawing, and everything on your site development drawing should have line items in your detailed budget. This even applies to application questions. Make specific references to budget line items and areas of the site development drawing where relevant. The more consistent you make all the parts of your application, the clearer picture you paint of the work you want to do. And the clearer picture you paint for the grant reviewers, the easier it is to score well. Here are two examples of consistency across an application. In this first example, highlighted in yellow, we see ADA access listed in the scope of work. We can also see ADA parking spots on the site development drawing, and the costs for that access appear in the budget. Here's a second example, highlighted in blue. We see required safety surfacing listed in the scope of work. On the site development drawing, we see where that safety surfacing will be installed. And over on the budget, we see the cost associated with installing it. Another crucial part of a successful application is to make sure your project is ready to go. Use the Ready to Go checklist to make sure you provide us the essential information we need to know. It's crucial that you understand this list. In particular, note the items with asterisks. These items determine the ready-to-go status of your project. Make sure you provide them in your application. Ready-to-go status is worth 15 of the application's 100 points. If your application is missing any of these items, your project may be determined not ready to go. If your project is determined not ready to go, most likely your project will not be funded. Each program area has its own ready-to-go requirements that are specific to the kinds of projects it funds. Attend the breakout sessions for more details on checklist items for your project type. A ready-to-go item for most project types is a P&DI receipt. You can use the Pennsylvania Natural Heritage Program's Conservation Explorer tool to request this receipt. Note that the Pennsylvania Explorer tool can produce two reports. The Conservation Planning Report is free to everyone, but includes little information. We do not accept that report. The report we need is the P&DI Environmental Review. This review has a $40 fee, which is waived for municipalities. These reports are good for 2 years. Note that this report is often referred to as a receipt. Applicants sometimes get confused and think we want the receipt showing they paid for a report. We need the actual report, not the payment receipt for it. If your report lists a potential impact, you can still apply. You do not need to resolve the impact at the time of application. The rest of this presentation will go through the grant criteria questions, which are what we use to score and rank your application. Grant applications are scored out of a maximum of 100 points. Our grant program is competitive, so every point matters. Please take the time to really understand what we're asking for in each question. Answer questions succinctly but thoroughly. Make sure that your answers align with your scope of work, site development drawing, and your detailed budget. If you don't know how to answer a particular question, click on the blue question marks located next to each question in the portal. These question marks open new windows with additional information, hyperlinks to more resources, and other suggestions to guide you. You can also contact your regional advisor. Criteria questions require written answers, so consider drafting your answers first in a word processing software. Use that document for editing, and then copy and paste the final text into the boxes in the portal. Text formatting is limited in the grants portal, so you may need to get creative to call out certain things in your answers. For example, the use of all caps may help you mark different sections of your response. Different web browsers also have different formatting capabilities, so test your copy and paste first before relying too heavily on a particular text formatting strategy. Our first criteria question reads, briefly describe your project needs, benefits, and urgencies, and how they will be addressed through your proposed scope of work. Note that we ask for 3 things in this question: needs, benefits, and urgencies. Be sure that you address all 3 in your response. Also note that even though the question says to briefly describe, it's important to still be thorough. Common high-scoring answers for this question are often about a page in length. Let's start by looking at how to answer the needs part of this question. We want to know not just why your project is needed, but how the need for this project was identified. For example, is the project a recommendation from a formal study, plan, or public input process? This is also a good spot to highlight whether your project will serve traditionally underserved audiences or create close-to-home outdoor recreation for those who lack it. You should also note in this question if your project is occurring in an area that is noted as a high or medium need area for outdoor recreation access. We'll look at how to figure that out in the next slide. One way to demonstrate need for your project is to use DCNR's Outdoor Recreation Access in Pennsylvania maps. The maps are part of a partnership project between DCNR, the Trust for Public Land, and We Can Serve PA. The maps were designed to answer two questions. Who has access to outdoor recreation within 10 minutes of their home? And more importantly, who doesn't? Your project can receive additional consideration if it takes place in an area identified on the map as medium or high need. Access statistics are available for 10-minute walk to outdoor recreation in general, 10-minute drive to trailheads, and 10-minute drive to recreational water access. To find the maps and statistics, visit DCNR's Outdoor Recreation webpage. The link is on the screen. Select the interactive map from the section Outdoor Recreation Access and Need Maps. A tutorial video is posted on the interactive maps with step-by-step instructions for how to use them. In this brief example on the slide, you can see areas of high and medium need in Cambria County. The map will also zoom to the municipal level. For example, here's the city of Johnstown. Once you've selected the area where your project will occur, the site will display valuable statistics on how recreation opportunities are serving your community and where there might be gaps. How can you use this data to improve your application? The level of need and the accompanying statistics can help with 3 questions. In question 1, they can help you identify needs associated with your project and the surrounding neighborhood. Be sure to call out if your project will take place in a medium or high need area. In question 3, it can help you demonstrate that your project will improve close-to-home recreation access. And in question 5, it can help you show that your project meets a Bureau priority of supporting work in medium or high need areas. Let's return to question 1. We've talked about needs, but this question also asks about benefits and urgencies. For full points, you need to speak to all 3 of these topics in your response. For benefits, tell us how your project will benefit your community or organization. Be specific to your scope of work, but don't be afraid to think broadly about the benefits your project will bring. Tell us how your project will improve your community economically, socially, and environmentally. In urgencies, we want to know why now. Tell us what makes your application timely. Safety hazards, development threats, and match sources that are at risk of being lost are all examples of urgencies. Question 2 asks you to describe how your project will help reduce the severity of current and future climate impacts through green and sustainable practices. We want to see green and sustainable practices in all our funded projects. In this question, we're looking for practices that will help reduce climate change or adapt to it. A common question we get is, what practices can we include to address this question? DCNR's Green and Sustainable Community Parks page is an excellent resource for ideas. It has guides, tools, and example projects that highlight green practices. A few options include planting native trees, installing a rain garden, and using pervious surfaces. Remember to be specific to your project. Practices mentioned here should also be referenced in your scope of work, budget, and site development drawing. If you've recently installed practices at your project site, tell us about those. In phased projects, the green practices often happen early on when there's more earth movement happening. On this slide, we've shared a few examples of how applicants have answered this question. Notice how direct and clear these examples are. Each bullet includes specific information about where the practice is located on the site development drawing and detailed budget. They also describe how the practice will reduce climate change impacts. This direct bullet point approach works well not only in this question, but in many of our application questions. Question 3 asks you to describe how your project will improve access for people of all abilities and comply with the 2010 ADA standards for accessible design. In this question, we want to know how your project will provide recreation opportunities for people of all backgrounds and abilities. All DCNR-funded projects must be designed and constructed to meet or exceed the 2010 ADA standards for accessible design. Once again, in your application, be specific. Show us the ADA elements of your project in your site development drawing and budget. If your project is funded, DCNR will not be able to close it out unless it meets ADA standards, and your design consultant certifies that the project met those standards. ADA standards can become tricky for certain projects. Consider reaching out to the ADA Access Board using the contact information on the screen if you have questions or need clarification on requirements. There are a few ADA requirements that most development projects will need to contain. These include an ADA van accessible parking space, and you'll also need ADA accessible pathways from the ADA parking space to all developed areas funded by DCNR. Your project may have other ADA requirements beyond these two. In this site development drawing, for example, there are ADA accessible picnic tables under the pavilion, as well as ADA safety surface proposed for the playground. Here's an example of how an applicant answered this question well. Just like in the green and sustainable practices question, clear, direct, specific answers are best here. Notice how this example shows where the ADA elements can be found on the site development drawing and budget. We also see again the effective use of bullets rather than a longer narrative. Think beyond ADA in this question as well. Meeting ADA is the minimum. Show us how you're making your project inclusive and providing recreation opportunities for everyone to enjoy. For example, this applicant describes how their project will create a playground in a high-need area that lacks recreation access. It also features inclusive elements in its play area. If you're applying for an acquisition project, your question 3 will be different. It reads, the department is a strong proponent of public access for property acquired with grant funding. Briefly describe the anticipated level of public access for each property/easement and what benefits will be realized by the proposed level of access. With acquisition projects, DCNR seeks as much public value as possible while providing flexibility to address special site conditions. The level of public value will be considered when rating and ranking your grant application. Public access is required for community recreation projects, but it's not required for critical habitat or open space projects. If public access will be restricted, use this question to explain why. Be sure to detail the other public benefits of the acquisition, such as the site's ecological value. Question 4 reads, describe in detail how the public has been and/or will be engaged in the planning, design, implementation, long-term maintenance, and/or stewardship of your project. DCNR wants to see public involvement in funded projects. In your response to this question, focus on how you have or will involve the public with your project in a meaningful way. The key word here is meaningful. We want the public involved in your project, not just being informed of it. What does this meaningful involvement look like? Involvement can happen before, during, and after the project's completion. Some examples of meaningful involvement before the project might include a formal planning process or community surveys to illustrate public buy-in. During and after the project, consider involving the public in other ways, such as community build days or maintenance support by local organizations. Question 5 reads, explain how your project will implement the action steps in Recreation for All, the 2020 to 2024 PA Outdoor Recreation Plan, and/or the 2020 to 2024 Pennsylvania Land and Water Trail Network Strategic Plan. This is probably the question applicants struggle with the most. It's also worth 15 points, so it's important to really think through your answer on this one. Let's talk about some of the common errors we see on this question and how you can avoid them. The first error we commonly see are applicants using old versions of the plan. Pennsylvania releases a new outdoor recreation plan every 5 years. If you use an old plan, you may end up with a 0 on this question. The current plans run from 2020 to 2024. Make sure the plan you're referencing lists those dates on the cover. You can see what the covers look like here on the slide as a reference. Links to the current plans are also built directly into the grant application to help make sure you get the latest versions. For trail projects, there is a companion Trail Network Strategic Plan that you should reference for this question. All other project types should reference the overall plan, Recreation for All. Another common error we see on this question is applicants not referencing actions. To get full points, your response needs to tell us how your project will advance 3 actions. You can find the actions on pages 86 to 91 of the plan. Specificity is your friend here. In your response, list the priority, recommendation number, and action letter, as well as the name of the action. And don't just list recommendations. We need the actions. The actions are the ones with letters next to them in the chart. The plan has 70 actions, so odds are there are a few that your project will benefit. Here's a visual to help show how the plan is divided. There are 5 priorities, 20 recommendations, and 70 actions. Remember, the actions, the ones with letters next to them, are the ones you need to reference in your answer. Here are a couple examples of how applicants have answered this question. Notice how the responses specifically note the priority, recommendation, and action by number, letter, and full text. There's also a description of how the scope of work will advance the listed action. Remember, to get full points, you need to call out 3 actions that your project advances. Finally, part of question 5 asks you to identify if your project meets a bureau priority. We covered these priorities earlier, but it's worth revisiting them here. If your project will meet one or more of these priorities, be sure to explain how it will do that in your response to question 5. For example, if your project will serve an underserved population, tell us about that group and how your project will improve recreation access for them. Let's move on to question 6. The exact wording of question 6 will vary depending on what type of funding you're applying for, but all of them deal with maintenance or long-term sustainability of your project in one way or another. The text on the screen is for development projects, so it asks about how the site will be maintained and kept in reasonable repair. Key items to address in this question include who will maintain the project. Tell us if you have staff and how many. If you're going to rely on volunteers or a partner organization, explain how that relationship is set up. Include a commitment letter from your partner to demonstrate their role. What tasks need to be performed? Describe the tasks and how often they'll occur. If you have a written maintenance or stewardship plan, upload it. If you don't have one, don't worry about it. You can still get most of the points for this question without a written plan. Finally, how will the maintenance tasks be funded? Explain if you have a line item in your budget, an endowment, or some other funding mechanism. Here's an example of another version of question 6, this time for planning grants. It reads, describe your capacity to implement the proposed plan or study once it is complete. Let's take a look at how you might answer this version of question 6. We don't want plans that sit on a shelf. So in question 6, show us that you're prepared to implement the plan once it is complete. Some good things to highlight include your ability to fund the plan's recommendations and who on your staff will manage that implementation. You can also describe examples where you have implemented plans in the past. That helps show us that you have the ability to follow through on a plan's recommendations. Speaking of implementing plans, the grant application will ask you to identify plans that your project will advance. Include 3 plans in your response. Focus on plans where your project is specifically mentioned, especially if it's called out as an early implementation or high priority project. We can accept lots of plans for this question, but do not use the state outdoor recreation plan or trail plan for this question. Those were already addressed back in question 5. Some examples of plans you could use include county greenway plans, river conservation plans, county park and recreation plans, feasibility studies, master site development plans, organizational strategic plans, and many others. Regardless of the plans that you choose, for each plan, please provide the name of the plan, whether your project is listed as a high priority or early implementation, the date of the plan, with plans less than 10 years old being preferred, relevant page numbers, and a brief description of how your project advances the plan. Also, for each plan, you'll need to either upload the relevant pages or provide a link to the plan if it's posted online. If you're attaching pages, please only include the relevant pages, not the entire plan. Finally, the last question on the application asks about project partners. It was mentioned before, but it bears repeating. We're more interested in quality than quantity for partners. Each partner you list should be integral to the success of your project. What kinds of partners can you have? Financial partners provide match in the form of cash, materials, or in-kind service. Technical partners provide time and expertise to your project. And general partners are those that will directly benefit from your project. For financial and technical partners, you will need to provide a letter of commitment or support that details their involvement. For example, financial partners should include the value of their match in their commitment letter. For all partners, you'll be asked to provide the name of the partner organization, the type of partner they are, and a brief description of why they're important to your project. We're almost done. Let's wrap up with a brief review of some key points. We start accepting applications on January 16th, 2024, and we close the grant round at 4:00 p.m. on April 3rd, 2024. Don't be late. Remember to contact your regional advisor early. That way you can discuss your project and schedule a site visit. It's never too soon to do this. You can connect with them even before the grant round opens. Scheduling a visit early gives you more time to prepare your application. Also, regional advisors only get busier as the grant deadline approaches. If you wait too long to contact your advisor, that person may not have time to visit your site. When building your application, you may want to refer back to this presentation. This presentation, as well as all the grant workshop breakout sessions, are available on DCNR's YouTube channel. You can also find a walkthrough of the grants portal there as well. Finally, if you run into technical issues with the portal, you can contact the portal's customer service by calling 1-800-326-7734. Thank you very much for listening to the grant workshop, and good luck on your application.